Hi guys, we are doing a tier list for Overwatch Classic. I felt like now is a good time to start talking about it. Been playing it pretty much the entire time that's been out. I spent a lot of time on it. I have a lot of things that I actually want to talk about in another video. The more I keep playing it, the more I feel like, a blast to the past really helps us learn something for the future of the game. But that is for another video. This video we'll be talking about the tier list for anybody that's interested in the power level of heroes, in my honest opinion. We'll approach it in an unbiased manner and give justifications as always. You're more than welcome to discuss it with me in the comment sections down below. So let's not waste any time and let's start with the tier list. Starting us off is Bastion. Now, Bastion's actually a pretty strong pick. On the day one patch, Bastion was a very scary hero. I feel like people don't remember that his spread changes had not come through. So Bastion was able to just destroy HP, especially if you're defending with Bastion on 2 CP. If you actually just move around and reposition a lot, and people don't know where you're constantly positioned, so they don't know how to poke you with Hanzo arrows or Widowmaker arrows, because Widow does like 150. There are multiple ways to deal with the stationary Bastion, but like Bastion is so damn strong when you know what you're doing. However, he's still pretty invulnerable, and in order to get the most max value, you do have to play him in his the sentry form. Sorry, not the sentry form. That like the machine gun form. I keep forgetting the name. So Bastion's a B tier pick. He still has his disadvantages. Very big hitbox. Very easy to jump and dive him. Like if you can do a little good dive, even like a Genji can take him out. A Hanzo scatter arrow can insta delete him. It's really not that hard to deal with him. I feel like there's a fair amount of counterplay and also play potential for the Bastion. Weird that he would ever appear in a B tier. Again, this is just my opinion, but I think he was actually a pretty good B tier pick. He was also very good at dealing with tanks back in the day. Moving over to D.Va. Now, D.Va is very awkward. I particularly think this version of D.Va, specifically day one patch D.Va, was a little bit on the weaker side. She's very clunky. Defense matrix didn't get the rework yet, where it's not a cooldown and it's a resource meter. And that, like, those quality of life changes made a big difference for D.Va. At the moment, D.Va's down here in B. She's okay. You can definitely play her, but she's not necessarily the best tank to have. You are like ultra passive on her. She doesn't have her micro missiles and everything. She's still pretty good at dealing with like the flyers in the game. Like Pharah gets chunked down by her still quite well. The 250 HP pools aren't here, so that makes a big difference. So D.Va's okay. She's not necessarily like A or S tier where like, oh my god, they're very powerful. Just like okay. B is like okay tier, right? Genji, A tier. Powerful, but surprisingly enough, and as I have predicted, that 28 DPS shurikens are not going to be broken. I still run into the issues where healing can cause breakpoint problems and all sorts of other things where the characters can escape and survive the different breakpoint interactions. And that's why, like, the number one takeaway I was able to take from this patch is give Genji 28 DPS shurikens. Seriously, 28 DPS shuriken is not going to break this character. If he's already we'll talk about why he's an A, but it's not the shuriken. The shuriken just allows him a little bit more consistency to combat against certain sustainability, and this is the weakest form of sustainability was day one patch Overwatch, and even then, his shuriken can have cases where they're weak. Now, where does the actual proper strength come from? Dragon Blade charges so fast, it is practically a cooldown. It is 8 seconds long. I like to call it the 1 hour Dragon Blade, and you just pull this thing out, and oh my god, you can do so much with it. You still get countered by a bunch of things. Transcendence and Sound Barrier coming up very quickly. Res is coming up very quickly. It just feels like, in a weird way, all this chaotic garbage was balancing each other out with other chaotic balanced garbage. And that's kind of what I hope sometimes that Overwatch went back to, but we know that's not going to happen. Regardless, the blade is actually the strength point of Genji. Pretty much always has been his biggest strength point. And that's kind of why, like, for Overwatch 2, I would like if they did give his shurikens more power. However, he's pretty good. He's very good at diving, enemy targets. He's very good at just, like, snowballing the game. Very, very good character to play. I wouldn't necessarily call him S tier. I do know who goes into S tier, but we'll talk about it later. Hanzo, also B tier character, pretty okay, pretty good. Him not having the leap actually holds him back from A. I would put him in A, but honestly, like, Hanzo just fits so well into the game. There were so many counters. There's so many ways to outplay him. He doesn't have his leap, so he's a little bit more vulnerable. He's 200 HP, smaller projectiles in general. I don't know why we just don't go back to the pre-season 9 state of the game. It felt better to play in general. Hanzo beat your pick. Very good. If you know what you're doing, you can headshot people, you can snipe, you can take good mid-range duels, you can actually combat tanks with scatter arrow. B tier character, definitely not A or S tier. It gets easily countered. very, very easily destroyed by the characters that will come up here in just a moment. Roadhog. Roadhog is surprisingly very good. Now, the problem with a lot of Hog players is they're playing him like his current kit in mind, where I can just do whatever I want, but like OG Hog players will know that if you spend any time on this character, there's not a lot of healing in this game, so Hog's burst damage is crazy, and all you have to do is just understand how to like play around corners a lot and use those corners for going for your hooks and then healing and then coming back. It actually stays truthful to the name, which is like take a breather. You take a moment to just sit, relax, take a breather, come back in, and keep going, right? So Hog, A tier pick. Wouldn't necessarily say he's B tier. And because the healing was just low, it allowed Hog for his breakpoints to just, wow, go crazy. Very strong character. Lucio, an S tier pick. I actually think all the supports are S tier, but maybe I'll drop one of them a little bit. Lucio is an S tier pick by far. I think Lucio is just one of those characters that has aged like fine wine in the Overwatch universe. He's never ever been in a bad state necessarily. Now his wall riding is utter garbage. There's just points in the game where you're like, I don't know why I'm wall riding. So the quality of life changes were much needed. His damage is a little bit lower, but it feels fair. Your job is to enable your team survive. You can definitely do good follow-up. Your boop had so much range. You can send people flying across into the pits. It feels really good to be able to utilize 𝐓𝐈𝐈𝐓𝐄𝐑 and 𝐓𝐼𝐈𝐓𝐄𝐈 Lighthouse on Lucio again. So you also fit in really well with the rush comps. You also fit in really good with dive. You know, poke wasn't necessarily a comp like in this day and age. So Lucio just fit in really well into everything. Cassidy, A tier pick. Oh, okay, no. I think Cass was S tier. That flashbang, fan the hammer combo, being able to delete tanks, like he had so much going for him. The fall off distance on his pistol was completely like taken, like it's pretty much not in the game at this point, if I'm not wrong. And man, he just feels like a sniper. Like he's uncontestable at long to mid range. If you have a good hit scan player in Cassidy, oh my goodness, he can be so terrifying to deal with. May's actually a very A tier pick. She's actually very, very good. She has her freeze, her hard CC in this. She's not really evolved that much over time other than losing her hard CC, but she's still a very, very strong character. And back in the day, man, Mei, you could do some crazy things. Supports don't really have much answers to Mei in this day and age, so Mei's ability to be flexed into different compositions was very nice, and especially when you're playing that brawl comp, she comes in handy a lot, and she does have really good poke damage as well. Mercy, now this is a blistering hot take. I actually think this version of Mercy was S tier. Not only does she have the highest healing in the game, Res was practically on a cooldown. It would come online by the 5th. Like if you hit 500 healing, I think, or 560 healing, you can actually get your ultimate, which is very easy to get like the res in. You can keep spamming res like an ability as well. That's actually what 𝐒𝐕 was doing. Shout out to 𝐒𝐕 if she ever watches this video. And, you know, like this version of Mercy, yes, this was probably the clunkiest Mercy had ever been, but by God, did she have a big impact in the game with the way she could turn team fights around. And you would actually have to, like, you know, think about the fact that they might go for a res if we win this fight. So let's have a follow-up to that res. So Mercy S tier. Playing her feels very slow and clunky. I do much prefer the Valkyrie rework of Mercy compared to this version of Mercy, but it is nice to have this back for a limited time period and just enjoy it for what she used to be. So Mercy, in my opinion, S tier character. Winston, S tier character. I think Winston's by far the best character in this game mode. Smaller HP pools, being able to cut through healing, synergy with all the dive characters, synergy with Lucio, good synergy with like Mercy being able to follow him in and get out, res him. Your Primal could actually kill things because of the smaller HP pools. Winston is a monster. Winston is also one of those characters that, again, like, he ages like fine wine. He's a very fair, fun to play character. Nothing too broken, nothing too sad. He gets dealt with very easily by characters like Reaper. And you could actually duel Genji. You could actually duel Winston on Genji. It's a pretty good skill matchup. Nowadays, it doesn't feel like that. But I miss those days. So Winston, S tier character, very good. Dive, double bubble, Winston Zarya. So many things you could be running. It was really nice to have the Winston over there. Next character is Pharah. I think Pharah is B tier. I wouldn't necessarily say she's S tier, but she's a pretty good pick in the King of the Hill maps. She was very, very good. There was a lot of ways to deal with her. She definitely doesn't go into S tier, but overall very good character. Don't really have much to say about her. She does feel a little bit on the slower side in terms of like being able to play some characters, but she was still very good. You could still pop off with her. She's still, you know, not a bad pick. Junkrat is B tier. So here's the thing. If you are defending on 2 CP, Junkrat goes up to S tier if you know what you're doing. And then like in general, Junkrat like is like a B tier character. Okay, he is very strong. Yes, technically the best way to play him is the skill floor of the character, spamming out grenades and everything. But the two CP maps are designed to be tight at the chokeways, and Junkrat can completely take over the game. Especially not only is he building Riptires so fast, but being able to control tanks and kind of force them to play slower with your spam is I feel like it's just one of those things that people don't necessarily understand or appreciate enough that Junkrat kind of brings to the table. He is, in my opinion, he is by far the best spam in the game, outside of maybe Bastion or in some other things, but I would definitely consider him in top three. And in that game, because in this mode, sorry, because the tanks have lower HP pools, Junkrat does a very fantastic job of keeping those tanks controlled, getting Riptide very quickly, getting picks very quickly. He's vulnerable to a lot of different things: a good Pharah, a good Genji, good Winston even. D.Va can still make his life a living hell here and there, although he's the B tier character, he does get caught out by some other things. Reaper A tier pick. Reaper was actually very, very, very good. Now I've seen mixed opinions on Reaper, so I would like to hear what you guys think about Reaper as well, particularly him. In my personal experience, we ran into a lot of multi-tank comps, and we had playmakers. You guys know he's my best friend. Bro, he locked Reaper and he just ran it down mid on those tanks. I had a game where I was playing against like multi-tank, some DPS, one support, ran it down on Reaper. Reaper felt very strong, very, very strong character. His spread wasn't as messed up. His ultimate actually feels very usable. That's what I liked about it as well. Reinhardt, actually very, very strong character. Wouldn't necessarily put him in S tier, although his barrier is crazily powerful. But he's definitely an A tier pick. Not much to say about Ryan. He's kind of one of those characters that has pretty much remained the same, although a very fun to play character, no denying about it. Miss the Ryan Zarya comps, and we'll get to Zarya a little bit later. Soldier 36 actually feels playable, but I will say that his damage numbers were very low, but he's playable, he's okay, he's in the B tier. Symmetra. I really like support sim. I hate the fact that this is the day one patch and not the area where Symmetra got the beam range increase and also being able to allow her turns to fly or something. So this, I did want support Symmetra, but I didn't particularly want this support Symmetra. I wanted to support Symmetra with shield generator as well. And unfortunately, I might have to say that I think support Symmetra was just the worst character in the game. I think there's a very, very small area where you can definitely make her work, but you are relying very hard for your team to hyper carry you, and a lot of the reason why she's so bad, the slower orbs, the very slow, not the slow, but the very the length of the beam being so small hurts Symmetra so much. Sorry, I know as much as I'd like to put it in C or B, sadly, in my opinion, I do believe after hours and hours and hours of playing this game mode, I actually think Symmetra was by far the worst character to play as. And it is what it is. Now, her other builder counterpart, Torbjorn, is actually not that bad. In some cases, Torbjorn or multi-Torbjorn comps, especially on 2CP, can feel very frustrating to play against. Now, I wouldn't necessarily put him in A tier, but he's in B tier. So, I'm going to leave it at that. Tracer is by far the best character in the game, yet again in this game mode. And again, she's in a bit of a rough spot. We will talk about the Tracer. We will talk about the... I have a rant coming up about the state of Tracer. I think she's been done some injustice, and we need to talk about Tracer. And I think Tracer was by far the strongest character the game has ever seen in this edition of the game. She feels nearly uncontestable. If you have a good Tracer that knows what they're doing, my goodness, man, being able to one-clip people even by body shots, especially Zenyatta's, you can chase, you can do so many things. It sucks not to have that one quality of life change where you can use Blink to reach some high grounds. That does kind of suck. Otherwise, Tracer actually feels very, very powerful. Widowmaker also S tier character, hate to say it, but Widow's 150 body shot was absurd, and pretty much like she's very strong. She's very strong. She has the same HP pools as everybody else. She still does get dived very easily on the same HP pools. Her grappling hook is very buggy in this game mode. I actually feel like this game mode was built on the workshop, because I noticed a lot of things that you usually notice when you're playing workshop. But I digress. I don't want to rip Blizzard a new one for that. Widow is very strong. Again, it's just Widowmaker. It's just one of those things where she's just so pathetically strong. I will say that Genji having the higher breakpoints and what's it called? Genji having the higher breakpoints and also like Hanzo wasn't that bad either. Both of them do a pretty good job of being able to contest and fight against the Widowmaker. And if you played like multi-dive tank comps, double Winston, double D.Va, well, in this case, double Winston, you could actually keep the Widowmakers, even multi-Widowmaker comps, very well in check. Moving on to Zarya, I think Zarya was by far one of the strongest characters in this testing. I don't know what it is, but I actually really find Zarya very fun to play. I don't know if they like soft rework the way her beam works or something, because even the graphics on the beam are different, so I'm kind of inclined to believe that the beam in Overwatch 2 is a little bit different compared to Overwatch 1 and they just never admitted to it. But the beam in Overwatch 1 feels so much satisfying. It feels really fun to chase characters. A Graviton comes online very quickly and you can hard carry games. Like I think if they like by far, like I would say Tracer and Zarya were the two characters that you could hard carry 1v6 progressively throughout the game, right? Zenyatta is awkward because in some cases he feels S tier, in other cases he feels B tier, so we're just gonna leave him in B tier. I think 50% damage increase on the target that he throws it upon. My goodness, as a teammate taking advantage of that can feel oppressive as hell for a tank. I was on the receiving end of that sometimes when I was playing tank or even a support, and I just got blown up. But I was wrong that this Zenyatta did have 150 HP, and that is a one shot, one kill Widowmaker body shot, and it's very easy to deal with him when he was a little bit slower back in patch 1 day 1, and not to mention the transcendence is very slow as well. So B tier has his areas where he could definitely be strong, but definitely not like where he is nowadays. And I think that's it, everybody. I don't think I missed any of the other original Overwatch 1 cast members. Let's have a quick look. It's Queen, Ana. These were all DLC characters that I'm looking at. Yes, these were all DLC characters. And this is where I put them and fare them on the tier list. I think it's actually interesting how outside of one character, all of them are actually very playable and very fun, even with like a 2-2-2 version of this. I think my list would stay relatively the same, honestly, implying that the balance patch is also the same, but we got the 2-2-2 roll lock. So, what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts and comments down in the comments below. And I will see you guys in tomorrow's video where we'll be doing a big rant about the state of Tracer.